Neil Hamilton.
Talking about Chloe. Well, I think we should start this debate by saying that what is true, that we live in a much less prejudiced society today than 50 years ago when I was young. And that's a very good thing. And I approve of the government's strategy on hate crime, and I appreciate the tone in which the Cabinet Secretary started off this debate. But one thing that does concern me about debates on hate crime is that we tend to get it out of perspective. Hate crime is, of course, abominable, and I speak as a victim because I once had my nose broken when I went to the aid of a gay friend of mine who was being attacked by homophobic thugs, and the perpetrator of that crime subsequently went to prison on account of it. I've also been on an IRA list for quite a number of years, and therefore I was under threat of being murdered. So I do understand what hatred is all about when you encounter it in a real sense. But we have no far-right party today which is active in British politics of any size. The BNP has disappeared, the EDL is insignificant, and I think we should celebrate that. We don't have the problems that some European countries have, and therefore we shouldn't get this out of perspective. I think we have to accept also that the figures that are reported as hate crimes really tend to exaggerate the extent of the problem. Mark Isherwood referred in the course of his speech to the fact that it's the perception of the victim which matters, not the actual reality necessarily. And the definition in the Home Office Operation Guidance, which is accepted by police forces in Wales, is that for recording purposes, the perception of the victim or any other person is the defining factor in determining whether an incident is a hate incident. So even a third party can report a hate crime as such, and it will instantly be logged by the police as a hate crime, even in cases where the victim himself or herself may not have wished it to be so. And there's an actual example in the police operational guidance, actually, which is, I think, quite instructive. A heterosexual man walking through an area near a gay club is verbally abused in a way which is offensive, doesn't constitute a public order offence. He reports the incident but doesn't believe it to be homophobic or want it recorded as such. But the officer taking the report down can himself record that as a hate crime, even though the victim doesn't want to. And the perception of the victim is not to be challenged in any way. Now, I accept that if there is a challenge to be made, then it should be done in a sensitive manner, but surely we must base public policy upon actual facts and not just upon perceptions. The other point that I want to raise in this debate is the attempt to use this issue of hate crime in order to grind political axes. We often hear it related to Brexit, and we often hear it raised in connection with people who believe that it's very important for the purposes of community cohesion that we should have sensible controls on immigration. And I think that this demeans us, actually, and reduces the value of our political debate, because surely we can accept that if you're concerned about immigration, you're not necessarily a racist, and you certainly don't believe that hate crime is a good thing. Of course, there are racists who want to control immigration for their base reasons, and there are people in all political parts of the spectrum, just about, who engage in political abuse. I mean, I have, from time to time, been the recipient of it myself, and anybody who wants to know what online abuse is about should go and see what's read about me, which often invites me to perform various physical acts which are not within my capabilities. But it's or indeed anybody's for that matter. And so, I'm well aware that if you take these things seriously, that it can be very hurtful. In politics and public life, we tend to be pachyderms, so we can brush this sort of thing off. And in what we might call normal society, then we may not find that quite so easy to accept. And so I agree very much with what Hannah Blythe said in her contribution that this is all about basic respect for individuals and their differences. And I don't believe that people should be abused or subject to physical violence simply on account of personal characteristics which they can't alter, or indeed for their political beliefs. Just in winding up, I will say that, of course, we're happy to note the motion, and indeed, as I already said, to support the government's strategy overall. We will not support the Plaid Cymru amendments. We're going to abstain on those, because I think they're drafted in rather a tendentious way. And that goes back to what I said at the opening of my speech. I haven't time to I'm afraid, dilate further upon that today, but I think there is widespread acceptance in this House, universal acceptance of the general principles under which underlie the government's policy, and we will support them in that endeavour.